Dear friends, my name is Boli. I'm a Redemptorist priest, and this time I would like to share to you my reflection on the Holy Week. As we know that we have gone through the 40 days of Lent, and officially the 40 days of Lent will end on the Holy Thursday. And if we try to count, there are 40 days between Ash Wednesday and Holy Thursday, excluding the Sundays. It is interesting, at least for me, that we begin the 40 days of Lent by putting ashes on our forehead as we celebrate Ash Wednesday. And we end these 40 days of Lent by letting those ashes removed from us as we perform the ritual of the washing of the feet. Is there any connection between these two rituals, the putting of ashes on Ash Wednesday and the removing of ashes on Holy Thursday? And if there is, what is the meaning behind this connection? My dear friends, to answer these questions, I would like to bring you back to the very beginning of the story or history of our salvation. At the time of the creation, the very first book of our Bible. So, the Bible tells us that when God created the first human beings, He used the dust from the ground. The first human beings were the last to be created by God. But when the time came for God to create the human beings, He consciously chose the dust, the ashes, we might say, the dirt from the ground. I mean, out of all those beautiful things God has created, why He chose the dust, the dirt from the ground to create us? St. Paul tells us about the quality of the things made from the dust, made from the soil, the dirt from the ground. They are easy to break. They are fragile. And that's why he uses the jars made from the soil as a symbol of his own vulnerability, as the symbol of his own brokenness. He says, we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that all surpassing power is from God and not from us. St. Paul realizes that we are weak creation, that we are vulnerable, easy to break, because we are created out of the dust. But that was the material used by our God anyway. And as God, of course, He knows the quality of that material. He knows the quality of the human beings He has created from the dust. He knows very well that we are vulnerable. He knows our weaknesses and He understands us. And so, He is willing to reform us again and again. He is willing to forgive us again and again. He is willing to understand us again and again. And the Bible says that after forming us with His own hands, He breathed His divine breath in that vulnerable creation. So that even though we are vulnerable, despite our own weaknesses, we have the power of God in us. The dust, the symbol of our humanity, the symbol of our vulnerability, has been transformed into a jar where God puts His divine treasure. My dear friends, on Holy Thursday, we celebrate or we commemorate two things that Jesus did during His Last Supper: the washing of the feet and the institution of the Eucharist. Jesus had spent some time with his disciples. He knew them by name and he knew their own weaknesses. He knew their own vulnerabilities, each one of them. He even knew what they were going to do before they did that. That Judas would betray him, he knew that. That Peter would deny him 3 times, he was fully aware about it. That Thomas will doubt about his resurrection as the Son of God, he knew. But he understood them. But he forgave them even before they committed those sins. And at that evening, before they began their Last Supper, he did something that they would remember for the rest of their life. He knelt in front of each one of them and washed their feet. The feet that full of the dust, the dirt from the street of the town, the ashes, the symbol of their human weaknesses. By washing their feet, Jesus removed the dust from their feet and forgave the dirt of their sins. And more importantly, he repeated in a different way what God did at the time of the creation. He knew that they were too weak to face all the tragedy he was going to suffer. He knew that they would lose their trust in him. So he decided to give them his own divine body and blood in order to strengthen them, just like the divine breath that God breathed at the time of creation. And this is, my dear friends, the beauty of the celebration of the Eucharist. The celebration of the Eucharist is a reminder for each one of us, the reminder of our human vulnerability, but at the same time, the reminder of God's perpetual accompaniment. Whenever we see the bread broken and the wine poured in every celebration of the Eucharist, we are reminded that our human weaknesses are being strengthened by the divine presence of Jesus. He is in us, and he is with us. And he will never leave us alone. The problems and the troubles of this life may come across our way, but we are not alone. No matter how big our problems are, no matter how heavy our burden is, Jesus is with us. He walks with us, and he's willing to stay in us, to feel our pain as well as our joy. And my dear friends, Jesus didn't stop there. He even entered the world of the dead. He even immersed his divine body into the dirt of the ground, the ashes by his own death that we celebrate on Good Friday. By going to the world of the dead, he redeemed the very nature of our humanity. The weak creation created out of the dust is now the seed of the divinity given by the Son of God himself, who has gone as far as to the world of the dead. And by his resurrection from the dead, he opened the gate of heaven for us. He made something that was not possible before his time, that is to connect the world of the dead and heaven. By his resurrection, he wants to make sure that heaven is the destination of those who believe in him whenever their lives come to an end. And this is what we celebrate, my dear friends, on this Holy Week. The beautiful encounter between God's divinity and our humanity. We celebrate the humbleness of our God, who is willing to take the humanity even to the world of the dead in order to bring us back to heaven. So, let us celebrate this Holy Week with our grateful hearts as redeemed creations, and let us share this Easter joy to the world. May God bless you.